Unity for all its time has been saying God is principle. And I don't really find that helpful. Mainly because I get stuck somewhere in that definition. It just doesn't quite work for me. What has worked for me lately has been this idea that God is dimensionless, no dimensions, no shape, no form, no edges, no texture really. God is dimensionless consciousness. That one presence, that one power we talk about is what God is. And here's how God can be defined, not as a human being that got really big, but as consciousness itself with no dimension. Today we're talking about God is your destiny is supposed to be the topic. But we've been talking about that to some degree throughout this whole book, this book called Spiritual Healing by Joel Goldsmith. We've been doing a book study. This is our 5th week on it. I would like to say there are a couple of practical things which I have not hit very much. I found I've been kind of focusing on what I call the more difficult teachings, the teachings of spirit, because where he's going with this is really quite profound. 2 things he did mention in here which are very good, practical, actionable things you can do in your life right now. The first one is don't judge. Now that may seem like I said that so easily, didn't it? Don't judge. I know it's not easy. I do think it's quite the pathway to a mind that is still enough to awaken to your divine nature. If you're in the process of judging, if that is your practice, what you're going to find is that is a stumbling block that keeps you from seeing more deeply the beauty of your own nature and the beauty of the nature of the world around you. And so you'll also be caught up in appearances. And appearances are just the opposite of where you want to go. So judgment, big no-no. Okay? Don't do it. And the second one is, he talks about supply, which is about essentially having enough. And when he talks about that, he basically says that the pathway to supply is not by trying to get, but by giving. I have a friend that's in here. He's been here a long time. You all know him as Hank Wall. Hank Wall taught classes for us some time ago about prosperity. He said he did it because his life was going pretty well, but he wanted to have it go great financially, in many other ways of abundance. He taught this class. He took to heart the message that he was teaching, which was largely, if you want it, give it away. Hank is one of the most generous people I've ever met. I'm going to read from a book he left on my desk just a couple of weeks ago, but I recently heard from his wife that he takes his employees' cars and gets them washed after giving them the car. Hank's world, as I look at it from the side, is going very, very well. And the practice of giving seems to be the secret to getting what you want. But you can't give to get, or it doesn't work. You just have to become godlike and just give. And it multiplies. So you may not have anything but a handful of dirt at this point, but give it away. You may have little more than a smile, give it away. As you give it away, it begins to multiply. And when it multiplies, then you have more to give away. Then you give that away, and it multiplies. Hank's a great example. If you have any questions, you can ask Hank. But today we're trying to do this thing which has become my deep desire for us as a community, is to awaken to our divine nature. Now we say it in our mission statement. We're a spiritual community awakening to our divine nature through love, service, and personal transformation. Okay. Let me give you some hints on how to do that, the personal transformation way. Let me start first by defining God, which is also defining your divine nature. Unity for all its time has been saying God is principle. And I don't really find that helpful. Mainly because I get stuck somewhere in that definition. It just doesn't quite work for me. What has worked for me lately has been this idea that God is dimensionless, no dimensions, no shape, no form, no edges, no texture, really. God is dimensionless consciousness. That one presence, that one power we talk about is what God is. And here's how God can be defined, not as a human being that got really big, but as consciousness itself, with no dimension. Now, when we have done these little experiments here in church, in which you pull back from being the person seeing and you just act as though you're seeing, you realize that prior to you being a person with a name and an address, you were consciousness itself. And as a baby, you came in and you had direct access to that consciousness, and everything was amazing. And there was no gap between you and the world out there. It was just all one thing, and you were like blown away. If you've ever seen a baby, it's like, right? And then we started training you to be a person. And we said, you're not wide open, you're a baby, and you're sitting right there. You have form and shape, and that's who you are. This wide openness, well, let's just drop that for a while. And you become somebody, literally somebody. And you go from consciousness to body. Now you're a body. And it takes a long time. It doesn't happen until you maybe in your 8 or 9 years old. Now you're convinced you're a body, or you're getting pretty close to convinced, and sometimes you space out and just, but they snap you back as fast as they can. By the time you're an adult, by the time you've graduated from wherever you graduated, you forgot all about the baby stuff. You're just into doing. You're a tight little package of thoughts, feelings, and bodily sensations. And that's who you are, and you stay that way until you wake up. And the waking up process is reclaiming this sense of consciousness as who you are, not the body. Because the body is the vehicle of consciousness, and consciousness is so much bigger than this body. Because as I was describing God, God is consciousness with no dimensions, just consciousness. Now, this is a hard concept, quite frankly. For those of us who are caught in the 4D world that we're in, consciousness transcends this, and it doesn't have to have a size to be something. It doesn't have to have a size to be everywhere and right where you are. And what happens is that consciousness has been who you are the whole time, because there's only one consciousness. As we say, there's only one presence, one power. You have been that consciousness from the beginning, but you took on the role of being a body and being somebody. And you got stuck in that role. And then instead of noticing it as a role, like an actor would, you thought, oh, I am Abraham Lincoln, right? And you know how that story ends. It's tragic. Your awakening process is remembering or coming back to who you are. And some of the ways we have thought we had to do it sounded like it would take lifetimes. But I want to give you these little, I don't know if I like the word hacks, these little techniques where you begin to see as though you were simply consciousness and not as a body seeing. Do you know what I mean? You drop the body in your mind and you just do seeing. You can do it right this minute. Just say, there's no one seeing, there's just seeing. Do you know, most of you have your eyes open? There's just seeing. Or if you're not seeing, there's just hearing. There's no one doing it. And now you're getting closer to your new identity, which is the seer. You've gone from baby to child to adult. Now you're going towards seer, the one that is an open space that recognizes you are the dimensionless consciousness that is having being in a body. That's who you are. You're the dimensionless consciousness that's having experiences through this body. That's who you really are. And when you come to the clarity that that's who you really are, you cease to be you and you merge back with God. And that's the path. Wake up to who you really are by stop being a body and becoming consciousness. And identifying with your consciousness, which some people would label your soul. I've given up on those labels at the moment. I've kind of given up on the label God, because when I think of God, I think of somebody that looks just like me. Or maybe somebody bigger and stronger or better. Or somebody that locates somewhere outside of my being, that's what God is. And I think this has been a hindrance of magnitude of I can't even name the magnitude of problem it is to awakening to you really are when you think God's over there. Now there are some people who've made it doing that. They have had emerging experiences that they've come through somehow and seen it. But Meister Eckhart, this 13th century German mystic, said, "The eyes that I'm looking for God with are the same eyes that God looks for me." Now that's a weird thing to say. Only can be interpreted once you realize that you are not the body, but you're this seeing that's happening without your body. It's just seeing without your name involved in it. And if you've had no experiences like that, you might go, "I don't get it." You know, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Well, you look like Jesus. We knew you when you were a kid. How can we say you are God? Because his mind had shifted away from being a body to being the presence that he has always been. The very same presence that you are. That presence is universal. There is only one presence, one power in my life and in the universe, God, period. How about that? Take it seriously. It's really, really a big jump to take that as deep as you need to go to realize that the thing they're saying is not a metaphor, but the truth. It's not like there's almost everything but God except for those people or these circumstances or my health. No, there's only one thing. And what all the things that you're looking at are made up is consciousness playing out in different forms. And the forms seem real, but you've had dreams in which the forms seem real too. Right? Focus on what will make you aware of your divine nature. Hang out in that long enough, and many of the things that you thought were so important pass away, because when you're not a body, what do you care about? I mean, what do you care about when you're not a body? Don't have to worry about eating, don't have to worry about a place to live, don't have to worry about a fast car. You cease to be that vulnerable thing that dies, and you become eternal. And this is the eternal life. Not that you're going to get to be so good that you go to heaven, and then when you're in heaven, they make a place for you somewhere down that street paved with gold. All that stuff is sunk in really deep, hasn't it? I got to be good to get to heaven. Somebody named God is going to judge me one way or the other, up or down. Ugh, don't want to go down. So start again, I think. Start again, not with your old definition and try to get there. Start with a new definition. Start with a new experience. Start with sensing the presence that you are with your eyes closed and your ears shut off. Sense the presence that you are with as little sensation as can come. Or open your eyes and look and see that it is not you that's seeing, but consciousness is seeing, and you are the vehicle through which that happens. That is primary. Your body is secondary, and it always will be true. All that you see is held within your consciousness, and when you get that, you realize that everything you thought was out there is actually inside of you, and you are the very thing you were looking for. That's the path and the destination. And when you get there, according to Goldsmith, when you get there, stuff's going to work out for you anyway. That's just the nature of it. You're vibing, I guess, at the right level, and things just organize themselves around you in a nice way. Don't judge. Be generous. It starts to happen already. Come to realize that there's only one presence, one power. I mean, what the heck? Why wouldn't it work out? But if it doesn't work out forever in this body, and it won't, you don't die with it. You go on. Jesus said, hey, tear down this temple, meaning himself, and I'll build it back in 3 days. Consciousness is the king and not an epiphenomenon of your body. It was here first, the body second. Let me read to you from the book that Hank gave me. Please don't everybody give me a book. Have you seen my collection of books? Funny thing, when I got this book, if I'd just gone upstairs and looked on my desk, I would have found a book on Hafiz, but I couldn't find it anywhere in my house or here. But here was a new one on my desk. This is the back of the book. It says, I am a hole in a flute that the Christ's breath moves through. Listen to this music. He's a colorful guy, isn't he? All right, my farewell. Some new texture of consciousness has risen where I camped. A fire that I sat around and thought of you turned into a place of pilgrimage that God visits. Not bowing to anyone but yourself is where this world is rightly headed. The Beloved is making me the center of his own being. How can one accept such an office? Take your greatest moment of pleasure and multiply that by 1,000,000-fold. Then you might barely conceive of what I'm talking about. Has your life been so conservative and restrained that you never collapsed on the floor from ecstasy? You don't have to answer. Who can remain standing in this divine process of turning into God? All forms collapse into golden dust. Nothing of me may survive to speak. These poems are my farewell. A silence between us would be my preference, but then my awkward kiss, my words might not be known. The talk about consciousness, God, awareness, however you claim to name it, is almost impossible to say anything that's absolutely true because our words and our language and the way we even conceive, even our minds are conceived and function, they limit what we can say. Just as our senses limit what we can see. We only see this spectrum of light. We only hear this spectrum of sound. We only think this spectrum of thoughts. Therefore, our words cannot describe the whole of it. What would it be like to surrender the limitations and move back into being? That is the quest. And ridiculously so, to go that way is to do what Jesus said, is to abandon your father and mother and come and follow me. Don't deal with the traditions as you grew up with. Break free of those and look directly at who you are. This is a big challenge. When I was a child, I thought like a child. But when I became an adult, I put away childish things. St. Paul is talking about the idea that I used to think I had to manipulate my world to make my life better. And this says, leave the manipulation behind. Turn your attention toward consciousness itself. Hang out in that and let the world unfold. Quite a few of us are old enough to be retired in this room. What else are you going to do with your life? I mean, how many grandchildren? How many trips? Why not this becomes your great mission? To reverse that becoming somebody into becoming the awareness, the consciousness, the God, the soul, however you name it, becoming that again as your identity. And you young whippersnappers, keep it in your back pocket that this is a way to transcend the three steps of baby, child, adult, that you can also be the seer. You can also be the saint. Okay, so let me just tell you one more time what I think could be an easy way for you to get a glimpse of what they're talking about, which is to peel back your attention so that you don't feel like you're doing the thoughts. Just open your eyes wide and see if you see yourself. You don't. It's okay. Take that as fact and be the seer without a body. Good practice. It's magic when you do it. I was talking with Anna. I'm going to finish really quickly, but I'm going to tell you that Anna said, I think this really appeals to men more than women. And I wouldn't know, because I just happen to be one of them. Not a woman and a man. And maybe it's because I think rather than feel. But one of the things you'll find if you do this, that what you've done is you cease to identify with your thoughts also. As I was saying in my class on Thursday, the gap between your thoughts is where this thing sneaks through. This is where it happens. It's not in the thinking, it's in the being. And when you're in the being, your heart is naturally open. So there we meet. The feeling and the thinking disappears in the being. Let us pray. As we move into meditation or prayer, let us just move into being. Sit there and realize there is a vibrancy in your being. And the two telltale hints that consciousness is where you're going is known as here and now. Be fully present, not thinking of the future or the past, and just be. And make this holy ground. And so it is. Amen. I hope you got something out of today's service. We intend to bring you things that will help you in your life become more of who you want to be, give you the freedom of forgiveness and the hope of expectancy that your life will unfold in a way that brings you joy, happiness, and is a contribution to the world. If you would like to contribute to this ministry, please go to unitytriangle.org, hit the donate button, and it will lead you into an easy way of doing that. We thank you for your attention and look forward to seeing you again here.